Are you familiar with SUMPRODUCT? Do you know truly how useful it is? Did you know that you can replace SUMIFS with SUMPRODUCT, but that it's even more powerful? Well, it is, and I'm going to show you how to use it. We have this monthly data here showing price and quantity by month and by product type. And what we need to do is fill in this template with the blue boxes. And the first thing we need is the total revenue. And you might start by saying equals price times quantity gives you the revenue. Then you just copy it down. And that gives you the total revenue for this date range that we're looking at. Or you could use SUMPRODUCT. So let's go over here, say equals SUMPRODUCT, tab. And for array 1, we need the price. So go over to D6, Control-Shift down arrow, comma. And for array 2, we need the quantity. Control-Shift down arrow, close paren. Sure. As you can see, that gives us the same number that we calculated over in column F. And that's the basic way to use SUMPRODUCT, but really, there's so much more to the SUMPRODUCT formula. Let's say we wanted to calculate the total revenue by product type. So we would say equals SUMPRODUCT, hit tab, and we're going to start with our sum range, or rather what we're trying to sum up, which is the revenue. So go over to cell F6, Control-Shift down arrow, Shift up arrow to capture only the range that we want. Then hit F4 to anchor. And now what we're going to do is instead of use a comma, we're going to use an asterisk. And then the next thing we need is an open parentheses and the product type in column C. So go over to cell C6, Control-Shift down arrow, F4 to anchor, equals cell K8 for product type. Hit F4 3 times to anchor on column K. Close paren, enter. Then we can just copy that down. So let's say Control C, Shift down arrow twice, Control Alt V for paste special, F formulas, enter. And here at the bottom, you can see 225,839 ties out to the revenue that we were expecting. Now let's say we want to calculate total revenue by product, but for only a specific date range. So let's start by saying equals SUMPRODUCT, hit tab. And again, let's start with the sum range, which is the revenue. Control-Shift down arrow, Shift up arrow, F4 to anchor, asterisk or and, open paren. And now let's start from left to right. Let's go all the way over to the month, starting in cell B6, Control-Shift down arrow, F4 to anchor. And now we want to say is greater than or equal to cell K13 for February. F4 to anchor, close paren, and open paren. Go back to the month range, starting in cell B6, Control-Shift down arrow, F4 to anchor. And now we'll say is less than or equal to cell M13 for March. F4 to anchor, close paren, and open paren, and then go over to column C for product type, starting in cell C6, Control-Shift down arrow, F4 to anchor is equal to cell K14 for product type. F4 3 times to anchor on column K, close paren, enter. And it's very important that you use the parentheses in the way we've just done here. Otherwise, it won't work. So make sure you're wrapping each argument with open and close parentheses, exactly as we've done here. Then we can just copy it down with Control C, Shift down arrow twice, Control Alt V for pay special, F for formulas, enter. And that gives us a total of 68,163, which if we go over here to the data, just double check that. February through March, 68,163. Perfect. All right, this is where it gets really interesting. This is where we're going to use SUMPRODUCT in a way that SUMIFS cannot handle. Have you ever asked yourself, why can't SUMIFS sum up across multiple columns? I know I sure have. And a great workaround is SUMPRODUCT. So let's go ahead and unhide this additional data that we have here, showing the gross margin and EBITDA for each product type. And we're going to fill in these boxes here, showing revenue, gross margin, and EBITDA for these date ranges, or rather Q1 and Q2, and for the product type. So the first thing I want to do is let's create this column here in column Q to make our lives a little bit easier. Let's say equals cell R6 for tequila. Then just set that equal to the cell above it. Control D to fill down. We'll copy that down to vodka, down to rum. Great. And that column will come in handy. So let's start the formula with equals SUMPRODUCT, hit tab. And again, we're going to start with the sum range, which in this case is going to go across the revenue and the gross margin and EBITDA. So then Control Shift down arrow and Shift up arrow to capture this entire range. F4 to anchor, and open paren. And let's start from left to right. That's the way I like to do things when working on the criteria here, is just work from left to right so that we make sure we capture everything that we need. So let's start with month. So starting in cell B6, Control Shift down arrow, F4 to anchor. And we'll say it's greater than or equal to cell S4. Hit F4 twice to anchor on that row. Close paren and open paren. And then we need to go back to the month again in column B. So starting in B6, Control Shift down arrow, F4 to anchor. And now we'll say it's less than equal to cell S5 for March. Hit F4 twice to anchor on row 5, close paren, and open paren. And now we'll go over product type in column C. Control Shift down arrow, capture the entire range. F4 to anchor is equal to cell Q7. F4 3 times to anchor on column Q. Close paren and open paren. And then go over to these headers. Revenue, gross margin, EBITDA, F5 through H5. F4 to anchor is equal to cell R7. Hit F4 3 times to anchor on column R. Close paren, enter. There you go. Then we can copy that to the rest of the box. Control Alt B for pay special, F for formulas, enter. And then from there, we can just copy this down to the additional boxes. And you're done. And you can see here that the numbers tie out to the totals here. So it's working beautifully, and it's working as it should. And this column here to the left that we created in column Q to help us with the formula, we can hide it so that if you need to print this or you need to give this to somebody, we don't need it. We don't need to be looking at it. So let's use Control spacebar to highlight all of column Q, Shift Alt right arrow to group it, and then we can hide it. And then it's a little easier to look at, looks a little better. So that's how it's done. Now, as a bonus, let's look at a couple of other items. The other thing we can do with the sum product formula is essentially enter the OR operator with using a plus sign. If you've noticed, I would say and every time we use an asterisk. But if you want to use the OR argument, then we need a plus sign. And this is how you do it. So let's start with equals sum product. And let's say we wanted to calculate the revenue for only tequila and vodka all in one cell. So let's go over to column F, where the revenues is sitting. Select this entire range for the revenue, hit F4 to anchor. And then we'll say asterisk, open paren. And then let's go over to the product type here in column C. So capture that entire thing starting in cell C6, Control Shift down arrow to C23, F4 to anchor, equals cell S27 for tequila. Close paren. Or using a plus sign, open paren. Let's go back to column C, this range again, C6 to S23 to C23, F4 to anchor, equal to S28, 4 to anchor, close paren. Now, something very important here is that this entire argument here is connected, or it's all related to each other. So we need to wrap it in additional parentheses. So put an open paren there, and open close paren there at the end. One more close paren to finish out the formula. Enter. And there you go. We got 181,565 for total revenue for just tequila and vodka, excluding rum. And if we want to double check that, we can use our little table we created over here. So total revenue for tequila and vodka is 113,478 plus 68,087, 181,565. Perfect. And finally, what I want to show you is wrapping sum product around a SUMIFS. And this is a really powerful formula because it allows you to use SUMIFS with multiple criteria in one cell, and you'll see what I mean. Let's start with equals sum product, hit tab, SUMIFS, and let's say we want to capture the total revenue again for just tequila and vodka. And this time, let's use this range here. So let's go all the way up to U7. Hit F4 to anchor. And for criteria range 1, we're going to use this column here. Hit F4 to anchor. And criteria 1 will be the revenue in S30. Or close paren. And in this case, the formula works, but we're not quite done. If we unhide this here, we can then capture only tequila and vodka. So let's continue the SUMIFS formula. We're going to add additional criteria. So put in another comma. comma, and for criteria range 2, we're going to use column Q. So go ahead and capture column Q, rows 7 through 24, F4 to anchor, comma, and for criteria 2, this is where we can use 2 cells, all for 1 criteria. And that's the product or the power of SUMPRODUCT. We're going to use S7 through S28. Whereas if we weren't using SUMPRODUCT, the SUMIFS formula would only allow you to enter 1 cell there for the criteria. Okay, now hit enter. And there it is, 181,565. That matches what we just calculated up here. Beautiful. So please do let me know if you have any questions in the comments. And thank you for watching. Talk soon.